Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Lillian Brummet. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting, Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here today. I'm so grateful to have you join us and talk about homepreneurship or homepreneurs, how to stay focused when working from home. And a lot of that has really come about. There's a lot of entrepreneurs like myself that are working both at home, but doing a lot of live events, which went on complete standstill during the whole COVID lockdown and during that whole period. And now a lot of people have begun to reluctantly get back into being live, but there's still a lot of operations from home. So it's kind of changed the way we do things. And you're going to share some of your expertise on how we can stay focused and productive and all that good stuff. But I'd love for you to share a little bit about your backstory. You work and your own business with your company, the Brummet Media, with your husband, which is awesome because not too many people can operate a business with their husband or family members and be really productive and thriving. So share a little bit about your backstory.
All right. Well, Dave and I met and married in the Okanagan region of BC, Canada, the westernmost province of Canada. And we met and married there 30 years ago now, 32, I think, wow. Maybe going on 33, something like that. It's 22, yes, it'll be 32 years. I was 20 years old when we met. And so we have been together a really long time. We started the business back in about 25 years ago. It actually started with Dave's drum lessons and drum repairs, but because I was running my own business at the time, but as we merged our work together, it became an entire different business, which is now titled Brummet Media Group. And that name sort of acts like an umbrella for all the services and products and activities that we do, as well as those we have planned for the future. We're kind of a multifaceted homepreneur because we have a lot of interests, a lot of activities. And I think because, being a homepreneur, sometimes you have to spread out and have your fingers in a few different pies because income ebbs and flows, interest in services ebbs and flows. So for instance, with our drum services section through the Angle Hill Studios, which is mainly Dave's focus, is where certain times of year, like right around just before Christmas, we have more interest in purchasing drums and gift certificates, and people use those as your Christmas gifts, right? And then towards after Christmas, right around February, March, people are just been at their home looking at their drums, wanting to play them, but the head needs replacing, or it doesn't sound right because it needs tuning, or it needs some sort of service. Boom, we get a whole bunch of activity in that regard. And then, late summer, there's a lot more interest in drum kit lessons. In midsummer, there's a lot more interest in hand drum workshops, as in group and family activities, people looking for something to do that's fun. And so they book us for those types of things. So it ebbs and flows in a variety of different ways. So each section of our business has sort of a multifaceted approach, and that includes our writing. Our writing includes 2 blogs that we manage and our 6 books that we currently have published on Amazon, including the trilogy that we're working on right now, or as well as the trilogy we're working on right now. And I have a book that I'm also working on for 23-24 time period as well. So we have a lot of those types of activities going on behind the scenes, as well as hands-on and in person. And you're right. Oh my gosh, when COVID hit, everything changed. Although I think it opened up a lot. It opened up our minds to the opportunities that we really do have at our fingertips. I think a lot of businesses revamped how they were approaching their audience and how they were reaching out to their targeted consumers or clients. And using the technology that we have available to us was, I think, vastly, it was really, there was a lot more exploration in that regard. And in the book industry, a lot of people use that time to take on the project of finishing that book that they had in the back of their mind, that they had started, getting it out and getting it published, and investing in, maybe getting the cover design, whatever it was that was holding them back. They got it done during that time period. There were something like 3,000 books published a day in the United States alone, in the English language alone, and because of COVID. And that happened about a year and a half into COVID. That's when all this happened, because people had the time to put that in. Another thing that really happened with COVID is that people really got on board with like e-courses, not only producing e-courses for their evergreen, income coming in, but also people joining in those because they wanted to improve their skills now. They're like, here's my opportunity. The people who were thinking of this in a positive way, they're like, this is my opportunity now to then improve my skills, whether it's my typing skills or my technology skills or my communication skills, whatever it is they want to improve. And that makes them more viable in the marketplace later on when it comes to, finding that new job after COVID. So I saw a lot of changes in that regard.
Yeah, I did. And, I saw people saying, well, now I've got all this free time for the first time ever. It was kind of like getting off the hamster wheel and being able to reflect, pivot, and say, where do I want to be? Where do I want to grow my business? Or if you're an employee, where do I want to stay for the next 10, 20 years, 5 years? Where do I see myself? And I saw some of my friends who operated an employee say, hey, how can I up my gain in the marketplace, gain some more skills? So yeah, people, after they got done with the Netflix and they were totally Netflix out, they're like, okay, now what's next?
Yes.
But I love
the
that
shock,
Yeah, exactly. But I love that you mentioned that, as far as being an entrepreneur, having your hand in several different buckets. And also I picked up from you that you gave to the marketplace in your area or your client base what was most necessary at the time, and that changes both with the seasons and with time in general. I know when Savvy first got started, our majority of listeners were launch businesses right out of the gate. They really didn't have much of a platform. They were just starting to grow their business. So we had a lot more people who said, I want to come on and do that thing of promotional interviews where they're kind of using their skill to teach through our platform. And then as we've grown and now we have mega businesses, thousands of employees, whatever, they don't need that sort of service. So now it's kind of revamped. And what I love what you're talking about that you and Dave have been able to do is you've been able to see what is needed right now. How do we pivot and most deliver what's most necessary?
Oh, and you're so right. Well, thank you for saying that, but you're so right. It is such a challenge to keep up with and to try to be on top with. Where are people going? What is the trend right now? There was a time when online radio was like the thing, and we were on there. We were doing, we did a radio show called Conscious Discussions. Ran it for 10 years. It was 3 times a week. It aired. It was an hour each time, new content. And I had been interviewed people from around the world talking about what they were doing to make the world a better place. And so it was nonprofits, it was volunteers, it was writers, it was a variety of different, green business, a lot of different activities or topics. But the main focus was showing that the world is not such a dark place, and that there are a lot of people out there making the world a better place. Because I think that the more that we highlight that, the more we become aware that it's everywhere, it's all around us. And then we become less in a state of apathy and start rolling up our sleeves and becoming a little more proactive in life, right? Yeah. So that was my real passion. It still is. It carried on to our Brummet's Conscious blog after that. But when I had to let that go, because my focus had to go in other directions. It wasn't because my audience had waned. I was getting about 30,000 a month, but I found that my time was so constrained, and there was so much behind the scenes activities in running such a program, like hours and hours and hours, as you know, right? You're communicating back and forth with your clients or their representatives, and then you're arranging everything, and then there's a follow-up and all the marketing and everything else, right? So I had to let that go. But I moved on to things where I knew that the audience was moving to. I knew I had more focus going in this direction. And so you have to let that part go, even if you enjoy it. And I think that can be a real challenge with people, because they don't want to let something go that they work so hard on and developing, and they want to stick to it. But sometimes you have to just let it go and move on to something else. But
well,
then
it's
again,
like if you're even if you're an employee at an environment, maybe you started there. There was a girl I know who was a receptionist for 20 years. Great environment for most of the time, but towards the end became a little toxic. And really, it's just as things grow and change, different people come and go. The environment might not fit you anymore. It might not be most beneficial. And like you're saying, you're giving awesome content, but also what I found here at Savvy, people were saying, hey, our time is limited. We'd like something a little shorter. So then maybe you switch it up and you do a blog so that people can read it quickly and on the go, depending on what people's needs are, because it changes as life changes. Now, how have you stayed focused? Because you and your husband work from home. How has it been that you've been able to create such awesome content and stay focused even amongst all these changes?
Not really sure. Sometimes, sometimes I think, wow, there's so much going on. I am, as a personality, I am very organized. I am tenacious. I'm a bit over self-disciplined sometimes. I have a hard time walking away from the office, even mentally. And so that becomes my challenge. I keep really good records. We also have, like, as far as running the business itself, we make sure that every 5 years we revamp our business plan, the entire business plan, from operations to like everything to future projections. And it becomes this basic, it's loosely produced together. It's not something like we're presenting for a grant or whatever. It's something that we're just using to focus our energy and know that this is the direction, this is where we're at, and this is the direction we're heading, and these are the steps we need to take to get there. So a basic 5-year plan, and then we break that down into an annual plan. What are we going to do this year? What is Dave willing to take on? What am I willing to take on? Where does his talents lie, his skills? If we could put those projects on his plate, I'll take on these other ones. Sometimes we have to learn new skills in order to do that project. And so we have to schedule in that time and make the steps to make that happen. So that annual plan basically sits this back and says, okay, here's your it's not too strict or anything, but here's your loosely step-by-step, what you're going to do this year. And so you sort of check that mark off, okay, this month, great, we got that done. Took us maybe 2 months longer than we thought. Darn, that was a problem. Wish it would have gone faster. Sometimes you get obstacles that slow you down, but we got it done, check it off, move to the next thing. So it was, go back and refer. What's the next step? Go back and refer. It keeps you on track as to the goal where you want it to go, but loosely based enough that you can say, oh, this is this opportunity with a specific timeline or a deadline that I'm going to be working on. I'm going to have to briefly set that aside, come over here and do this project, and then right back to that. So I have to be self-disciplined enough to follow through with that. It's a skill that I developed over time. It's not something that I just woke up and was born with. But as a business owner, over time, you develop these skills. And I think that being aware that that's a necessary skill to develop is really important for new entrepreneurs or homepreneurs, anyone that's going to be starting a business or is currently running a business. You got to hold yourself accountable. And we have these meetings.
Yeah, I like that you're mentioning that, because you're mentioning the fact that you are keeping a plan of action for both of you and then putting it forth, but not married to it so much that you can't pivot if necessary. And I'm hearing that the key point, that you have to have some sort of plan forward or vision, or else you're just going to be aimlessly all over the place. So by having that plan, but not being super married to it, now you can start to pivot, change a little here, tweak this, tweak that to make it more efficient.
Absolutely. And the shiny thing, there's something that wants to distract you. You can write that down, put that in a file folder somewhere as a potential project to look at in the future. So you don't feel like you're losing out on opportunity, or maybe you're going to forget about it. You can write that down, and then when your schedule does open up, you can maybe go after that shiny thing that really attracted you at that moment and see if it's something that's applicable to you at that moment. But I think that it's really important to have those monthly or weekly meetings, meet up on the deck, just to talk on the about the business, crack open a bottle of wine or a beer or whatever, and just loosely, what are you at? What are your challenges? Are you finding that maybe your schedule isn't allowing you to do this project within this timeline that we had projected? Is there something that I can do that I can help you in that regard? Maybe I could take on some of his household chores or something like that. You know what I mean? So I can be a help and a guide behind him, but I'm also a cheerleader, and I'm in a way kind of holding him accountable too. I got my own plate of to-dos, so I can only take on so much of his to-dos, or vice versa. He can only take on so much of mine when I'm feeling overwhelmed.
So I'm hearing this communication is a big key,
right,
and that you're constantly looking and comparing notes and saying, where can we help each other? And I think that sounds like what's been your greatest success working together is this constant mode of keeping communication open.
Absolutely. And with the mind of, he's not going to be at his best every day. I'm not going to be at my best every day. There are times when I might feel super frustrated that a project isn't getting completed, but the guy's doing overtime at work. He's coming and he's doing, student lessons in the evening. He's got his gigs with his band. He's a busy guy. And so I have to, in my mind, take that down to, really, what is the obstacles? What are the things? How is he feeling? Is there a way that I can help him in some way? Or, maybe reduce the amount of stress and importance that I'm putting on that project so that it becomes less of a weight on both of our shoulders. Maybe there's something we can work around or outsource. So there's lots of things that we can look at doing that we can maybe mitigate some of those potentially bombs that could have really hurt the relationship. We can look at that and say, okay, this is a sensitive issue for me. Let's talk about this because it's bothering me. Is there something else that we can do about this? Or maybe, what do you think we should do?
I like that you say that, Lillian, because when my husband and I first worked together in his business, we have two different styles of working together. He's more laid back, chill. I'm like, okay, we're on a time schedule. Boom, boom, boom. And it's always causing a lot of tension because I'm like, we've got a time schedule. And I'm not a procrastinator in that when an order comes in, let's just do it now.
Right.
And he's like, no, we got to weigh it out and put it on paper and map it out. And I'm like, no, I'm the kind of let's wing it and do it. So we had to, like you were saying, come together and say, what are our two working patterns? How do we see and approach this? But how can we come at it together as a team instead of going, no, we got to do it my way or we got to do it his way. Yeah.
Right. So you look at the benefits of what he or she is bringing to the table. And even though it's not something that maybe is in your personality or comes to you naturally, you can see that activity is a benefit. So maybe you can incorporate that together into how you operate the business. Absolutely. Yeah. Really understanding it and working through it. It comes over time. It's not going to happen overnight. That's another thing that people have to really pay attention to, especially when you're starting out the first few years. Your expectations are not going to be met in any regard. We always, I always project, this scenario, worst case scenario, this is how it's going to be. And then you end up maybe not meeting that worst case scenario, or something interrupts or you go another direction. So I think that being together and really speaking about that is really, really important. Understanding that he has his own stresses and that I have my own stresses. As you say, I'm actually the one who tends to be like the introvert, and I tend to be a lot more organized and much more in the office and doing, activities like this, marketing, a lot of the writing. My husband is more the creative person. So he's very charming with people. He's really good with face-to-face activities and, group activities and leading things. And I'm not, I shrink, I'm like, wow, that's too much for me. So we try to take advantage of that. He takes on certain things, activities, and I take on certain activities. I try to be like, he's also an artist. So as a musician, it feeds his soul to do this, right? In this regard, just as much as writing or carving or painting might be for me.
Mm.
For him, his painting, his drumming, his building of drums fills himself. And so knowing that about him and trying not to take that away from him or using it against him, saying, oh, you're putting all this time into fulfilling yourself. But a person has to do that if they're going to be a whole person and come into the picture, right?
Exactly.
As a whole person. So we need to allow each other that space as well.
Yeah. Well, these are great tips, not only for running a business, but for marriage and relationships. And you've offered so much and so many things that aren't hit upon often, which is really just paying attention to each other's different soul needs and personality differences, and saying what are our greatest gifts and talents we're bringing to the table, and how can we best both put them out there together as a unit, a unity together. Well, we could go on for a long time, but
I think so.
we could, but we're coming to an end here, and I don't want people to leave without finding out how they can get all your wonderful books, find out more about Brummet Media, and work with you all. How can they do that?
Well, if they go to Amazon.com or, .ca, whatever country they're in, go into the Amazon and look for Dave and Lillian Brummet in the books section. You'll find our 6 books from there. We keep an eye out. We have a trilogy coming up and another book coming up after behind that. So lots more to be published in the future. The best way to find us is just to go on to your favorite search engine and type in Dave and Lillian Brummet. You'll find pages and pages and pages of information about us from there. Our main website is brummetmedia.ca. That's BRUMMET media.ca.
Awesome. Well, Lillian, I just have to thank you again for coming to share your great brilliance on Savvy Broadcasting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.